understand the black media will be one that will probably focus on that from a different perspective from the way the white media would have.
Okay, let me ask you, since you've been involved with the newspaper for many years here in the Atlanta Daily World is the largest or the oldest one in the city, is that correct?
The oldest
okay,
and first.
Now I'm sure that you can go back a little ways, and not to reflect on your age or anything like that, but you can go back a little ways and see how how African American newspapers and magazines and publications has evolved to where it's at today. And the reason why I'm asking that, because I go back to the time when I was a part of the Nation of Islam in the 60s, early 60s, and how difficult it was to get people to read things that was written by African Americans. And I'm asking you, if I might, Ms. Scott, how have you seen the changes take place, even with your own newspaper and your family traditions that you have brought in trying to give good information and accurate information to the Atlanta public?
Well, we have come through a lot because we started when there were very difficult times, racial barriers, and we had to fight for everything we could get, trying to get the advertising dollars to even justify us printing a paper in existence. We came through the 60s, we came into the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and now I would say that over the years, the world, one thing, we've never compromised on our integrity and our responsibility to our audience, to our readers, the African American community. We've always felt we had a responsibility to educate, to inform, and to sort of lead, I guess, and sway and direct. Because you have, as you say, how do you go up against this massive general media out there that's stereotyping us into certain images?
That's right.
And people that see that, that's what they know. So we have to fight all the way as black publications to make sure that we tap into that that family out there, that audience that will read between the lines. And that's what we try to do, give more interpretation, a more sensitive perspective and understanding of what we feel is in the best interests of our community.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
No, I would like to say, I think in terms of can we analyze, can we develop a sophistication to deal with the subliminal things that you mentioned that goes on in terms of the media? I think we can. I think we have to educate our children to do such.
Well, in reflecting back on just the book that I was reading, and as I read it, the author who wrote it, he explained that if you are not skillful in learning how to look into things, then you're going to miss it. I don't care how educated you may be, if you understand my point. Because these people who do the things that they do, and I'm not saying that they try to tell us nowadays that these things are not being done, that they're not using these kind of subliminal methods in order to get people to do certain things. But you brought out a good point, and I'll let you get in. You brought out a good point about the internet. I was on the internet, right? Because and I think that all of us need to use these vehicles because if we don't catch up, we're going to be that much further behind by the turn of the century. But I'm just saying that sometimes you can go into these chat modes and talk with people about issues, and they have no idea who you are. And I think that this is a vehicle that gives us an advantage or makes us competitive with every other people. And I wanted to ask you, while I was talking about these things, you being in an academic setting, and you're seeing a lot of the diversity that is coming from the African American community. Is our diversity still keeping us from being able to respect each other in the areas that we should be concentrating on making differences and making changes, you think?
We do a lot of talk about diversity, but we don't practice it. And I think that's true. When you have people in our community who are non-Christian, if you have people in our community who have names like me, if you have people who might be from various regions, I think we don't tend to look at those differences. I think a lot of times would be more acceptable of differences outside of our community than we would for differences inside of our community. And I think that's something that we have to grow up. We have to grow on as a people.
Have you found that to be true, especially being in the business of editing?
Well, I certainly know that the black community is not monolithic in ideology and not in appearance, not in names and this sort of thing. So if you see how the world has changed, I think we're growing more to understand that there is a lot of diversity even within the black community, a lot of ideological differences. And I think that's healthy because I think checks and balances are good within any society, within the races, checks and balances, so that we don't go to the extreme. You've got a lot of people out here now, and look at the situation in Montana, that have gone off the deep end, in my opinion, and they're extremists. and you're going to find the same in probably a lot of other ethnic, even in the black community. But at least I think the black community is, because we share the same similar history, that we're not going to just go too far off the deep end. I think we're all going to, you know, we all seem to come back into the fold when it comes to survival, and that's what I think we have our greatest strength behind.
Okay, go ahead, please.
And something else about talking about the responsibility of black media and the outspoken blacks. Sometimes we individually and collectively have to do our part too, to stick together and fight the media too. We talk a good game. We'll say, oh, I don't like this image on television, but that's all we do.
We won't do anything.
And numbers is everything in this world. I mean, money talks, numbers talk. If you write enough letters to a CBS network or an NBC or an ABC, you'd be surprised how many shows you can get off the air and back on the air. As the case with Tim Reed and his wife Daphne Maxwell Reed, when they were trying to get their show back on. Well, everybody will call up these radio shows and they do these newspaper polls, and they'd all say, oh, we'd like to see the show come back. And they'd be 80 and 90% of those polled would say, we'd like to see it come back. Then when you look at how many pieces of mail went to that television network, it's just 1,000. And there's some 20 million of us in America. And that's the sad part, too. We don't, it's, you know, when you talk about, I saw something, I saw a man get shot, I saw this. Well, no one will go and testify. No one will come to, and because everyone is, well, that's not my fault. I'm staying out of that. I'm doing my own thing. And we got to be careful and responsible enough to know that everything is our concern. And with the media, we blame the media sometimes too much, I think. I have a couple friends.
Why would you say that? I mean,
because every time you see something, some things are just facts. You know, some things are just straight born out facts. If you see a person, and I don't want to call any names, but let's say a basketball player, and he's saying something and doing something that you know he should not be doing, i.e. drugs, rape, or whatever, you can't say the media is portraying him as a bad person when he is a bad person.
Yeah, but look at how they would focus in on that one person, and there's 1,000 others that don't do that, that don't get the same kind of attention.
But see, you know what? We can't worry about what the other ones are doing. Let's worry about if we didn't do it. It goes right back to, oh, well, the white man is putting the drugs in the street. He may be, but he's not putting it in your mouth and in your veins. You can't blame the other person for putting something out there. It's still your responsibility to do the right thing.
But don't we get a lot of controversy about the kind of media attention that African Americans get, especially our young men, who are being depicted as being nothing but drug dealers and criminals, and but the good.
And it is biased. It really
that's
is.
That's my point.
You know, but he's making a point that, you know, fact is fact, but it's how you present those facts. Those facts. But that's why we have to encourage our young people to support the black mediums, like the radio stations we own and the black newspapers. We don't own TV stations yet, so naturally I'm saying we have to train our young people to be cognizant of our own black institutions, particularly those that we know we control and we own.
Well, go ahead.
That cartoon issue that was on the front page of the Constitution a few months ago, maybe less than a half a year ago, there was so much talk about this is racist, it's slanderous, this, that, and the other. And I can remember sitting around the Daily World, and I was telling some people who was outside on Auburn Avenue, I said, yeah, that's all talk. Those same people are going to go spend that 50 cents and buy that paper tomorrow. So if you don't do something about it, it's just like saying, I accept it. So again, I think it goes back to you as the purchaser. If you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars buying these these newspapers, and hundreds of millions of dollars at the movies, you're just like saying, I accept it. That's good. Let them say this about my people. Let them do this to my people. But if you don't go out there and look at Jesse Jackson when he was forming that union for the Oscar Awards. There were some cities he only had 50 people, only 60 people. And yet we'll say, oh, well, the Oscars aren't supporting blacks. And then millions of us were right back at the theater that following Friday seeing the white man's movie.
Well, you know, I see your point. You know, one of the controversies that I think that comes up when you're talking about these kinds of issues like we're dealing with right here is how do we get people to realize the value of those vehicles that we do have?
Education.
For example, the